Mr Chair. I'm delighted to participate in this debate on gambling-related harm, and I want to congratulate and recognise all the work my honourable friend, the member for Inverclyde, has done on this issue and for bringing this particular debate forward. And I think, Mr Chair, we would all agree that self-regulation of the gambling industry hasn't worked and it won't work. And we even see today in this chamber, Mr Chair, that self-regulation doesn't work, which is why the 6-minute time limit you imposed was completely ignored by other members in this chamber at the expense of their colleagues. I wanted to participate in this debate because in North Ayrshire, the majority of which I represent, the latest figures I have for that area show that in the last 8 years, from 2008 to 2016, £32 million was gambled. This is a post-industrial geographical area facing huge economic and social challenges. And this level of gambling is a major cause of concern. And before I go any further, I do wish to acknowledge, as others have done, that many people gamble in a responsible way and come to no harm, and good luck to those people. But that is not the focus of today's debate. Today we must focus on the adverse impacts from gambling on health and well-being of individuals, families and communities and wider society. And this gambling affects relationships, mental and physical health, finances and exacerbate existing inequalities. And there is a clear link to poverty and disadvantage. Gambling addiction destroys lives, and it's believed that there are 430,000 gambling addicts in the UK, with a further 2 million at risk, and gambling is linked to between 4 and 11% of suicides. This is a public health matter, and words alone are not enough. And this means we need to appreciate that individuals are embedded in communities. So effective action for reducing gambling harm will include not only protecting and preventing harm to individuals, but also to mitigate risks to communities and families. We need to look more critically at the opportunities to gamble in our communities through the number of betting shops, the level of social deprivation, which is also a risk factor, the use of advertising, what support is available for those living with this addiction or those vulnerable to developing such an addiction. Now, with its limited powers, the Scottish Government has already committed to using planning legislation to address the proliferation of betting shops in specified areas. But our task as a society must be to prevent and reduce the harm that gambling causes. And I very much welcome the Government's action to reduce the fixed odds betting terminal stake. And I know there was great pressure from some Tory MPs and indeed the betting industry itself, which has very deep pockets, to try and prevent that from happening. The concern is that online gambling means that those who are vulnerable to addiction or already living with a gambling addiction find it increasingly difficult to escape what some might call the lure of gambling. So there has to be greater regulation of this to ensure that there are proper and robust affordability checks in place and proper spending limits enforced. The motivations to take this bull by the horns offers benefits to us all. It will mean reduced health costs, reduced welfare and employment costs, reduced homelessness and potentially reduced criminal justice costs. And the benefits to families and communities of those with such an addiction are beyond price. We're still not very far down the road in dealing with this issue. First, we need a proper, wider review of the impact of gambling on children themselves and identify what policy changes are needed. We need to do better. And I say to the Minister, if the Government is not prepared to act and go further here, if it allows itself to be a prisoner of gambling interests and lobbying, then I urge the Minister to ensure instead that the full devolution of gambling policy is given to the Scottish Government, with the full powers to effectively tackle this problem. Well, you've had generations and you've not done it yourselves yet. Thank you, Mr Chair.